Hey guys, welcome back to another Tech Tip Tuesday. Today we're back on the big yellow banana, or whatever Brian calls this Extreme Blazer. It's a super cool build that we're working on this winter, putting a lot of new parts on it. But today I wanted to talk about weight bias and balance as you're designing a turbo system or a whole build for that matter. So a lot of us start out with 300, 400, 500 horsepower NA applications, and then we somehow work ourselves into these 1,000, 1,500, 2,000 horsepower combinations. The problem that happens with that is that your mindset and how you're building a vehicle and where you want weight placed oftentimes doesn't change because you've never been told otherwise. So today's video, I just kind of want to go over quick my mindset after having been through that kind of series and progression of a build, so that when you're designing a turbo system or building a car from scratch, you know where to put the weight and you're understanding why it doesn't need to be certain places or what percentages it needs to be at. So take for instance this Blazer. A huge trend I've seen recently on especially vehicles like this that have real short front ends is people will move the radiator to the far back of the vehicle. Now that can be great, and I'm not necessarily saying somebody's wrong about doing that, but what I've found with high horsepower and radial cars and these turbocharged forced induction types of applications is that oftentimes people are moving weight to the back thinking they need it for traction. And I'm here to tell you, whether you're no prep or you're racing on a prep surface or anything, you don't need that much weight bias to the back of the car. It's definitely an easy way to make the car hook up, but as you start to apply more power, it's going to become an issue. It's going to prove to become something you start to fight against, which is really complicated and really annoying if you are really starting to get the hang of a vehicle and you start putting power to it, and all it wants to do is wheelie and power wheelie. So how this kind of became relevant to me is, like I said, I worked my way up. I've had a bunch of turbo cars. I've had some reasonably fast ones. My own personal Nova, in this video you'll see, we basically got to a point where all it wanted to do is wheelie. You could strap the front end down, you could tighten up the front struts all the way, have no suspension travel in the front, and it just power wheelied itself to the point where it started breaking a lot of parts. What I realized, and again, I build all these vehicles so that I can learn from experience, but basically we had the weight bias way off. We had like 50-50 weight bias, and on a car that makes 1,500 horsepower, that's simply too much weight bias in the back. Now different things come into play, like anti-squat, bar angle, and just the chassis length and everything as a whole. But generally speaking, if you start to get into the radial world or even some of the no prep stuff, small tire, big horsepower cars, you'll see that these guys start running 54, 56, 60, 62% weight bias on the nose of the vehicle, which is completely polar opposite to, you know, what we used to all think about and want to put weight in the back, that way the car can get traction and stuff like that. Especially on a prep track, you don't need the traction, especially if it's a really good prep track. What we've figured out are the suspension dynamics as well as the shocks are what's going to plant that tire and make it go down the track. A lot of times adding weight to the back is covering up other problems. Additionally, when you put a radiator in the back of a vehicle, you're adding a whole length of expensive hose oftentimes, which is also a chance for it to leak and become a dangerous situation. Again, I'm not saying it's wrong to do that, it's just something to think about. And you're moving weight typically past the back axle of the car, which is hard to recover from. It's basically a leverage point for the vehicle. And as I said before, a lot of times that'll work to a certain point, and then there's going to be a point where you can't overcome what that weight is doing to the back of the vehicle. And if you're really trying to go fast and you're really trying to pour the coals to it and you've already built your vehicle, it's hard to like reverse and redo all that stuff later on. So it's kind of good to know ahead of time. Basically on my own personal Nova, we had to start adding weight in the front of the car until it got to about 54, 55%, and that's when it finally started to keep the front end down on it. Another thing to think about is tall weight is different than low weight. So what I'm saying there is if we mount the turbos all the way up here, that creates a different chassis dynamic than adding weight way low on a vehicle. That's why you'll see a lot of the really fast class cars and stuff put weight down low. Not only will it make more stable driving, but it you know, keeps it from leaning back and forth. There's just all kinds of dynamics. I learned this from my friend Eric Yost at Customs by Biggin. And now that I've said this, if you haven't paid attention before, you'll see a lot of the really fast class cars keep the turbos down low and towards the center of the vehicle. I guess what I'm trying to say is, if you're building your first vehicle this winter and you're really concentrating on something that you want to be able to progressively go faster, taking into consideration where you're placing weight, how high you're placing weight off the ground, will really dictate how far that platform can go without a redesign. I think you can probably make it work either way, but the last thing you want to do is be adding weight to the front of the car to counteract weight on the back of the car, because overall you're just making the chassis a lot heavier, and a really easy way to go fast is have a light vehicle. So if you have more questions on this, I would definitely consult a chassis person near you, your chassis guy, whoever. A lot of you guys get chassis built and then you hang your own turbo systems off and mount all your accessories and stuff. A lot of those guys know a lot about this topic, and they should typically be a great resource for you. I'm not here to get into in-depth vehicle dynamics and stuff, but from experience, if you're building from scratch, pay attention to where you're mounting things. Pay attention to kind of what your goals are for something, and I think it'll really save you a lot of heartache and a lot of refabrication in the long run. I hope this helps you guys. Again, this stuff isn't a one-size-fits-all, and I'm not saying you're wrong if you put your radiator in the back, but kind of really understand what you're trying to do with a vehicle long-term, and that will dictate where things are going. And once you understand that a big power car doesn't need all that weight in the back to transfer weight and hook up and go down the track, it really kind of makes a light bulb go off in your mind. We'll see you guys next time. I hope this Tech Tip Tuesday helped. Definitely drop us a comment below if you have a question on this video, or if you have a suggestion for another video. We'll see you next time.